Hi there everyone, welcome back to Dandelion Delphi tutorials. This lesson is going to have a look at final of 2022, question 2.2. Sometimes it's referred to database programming. I just call it addo tables because that's the components we use to code with. But in this paper, the heading for question 2.2 said Delphi code. Now, grade 11s and 12s, this would be applicable to you. Grade 11s, you usually do addo tables in term 3. The database will be linked for us to the program, and they will then also, right at the top of question 2, so above question 2.1, they give you this table that they say the variables are declared, and you're going to use them. So these two variables are addo tables that they have created dynamically. If you look at your code, you'll also see it. I'm now at the top of my program, and you will see the two variables there that you're going to use for this question. So you do not look at the names of the tables as they are in the screenshots of the data sheet. So if I open that, they are the same. But if they decide to change it one year, you will have a look to see what did they say in the question here. What should I be using? Also take note that the database is protected, password protected, so you cannot open it in Access. So that's why, if you're doing this electronically, I open up the question paper in Adobe, and then I right-click on the same file and open up the same document, but in a browser. I'm using Google Chrome here, so that I can have it open on 2 pages. These are the last 2 pages of the question paper that you will detach, tear off when you write question 2 and place it right next to you. For this question, you may not use SQL code. You have to use your addo tables. And the first question in this paper is asking us to do an insert. So you have to add a new record. They also tell you which table. So you know to use TBL clients. And the details of the clients are as follows. So these are the values that we're going to add. So this is a fairly easy question. Press pause and try it yourself. I will show you the example of output just now. At the bottom here, you can see part of the output of TBL clients once this ran successfully. If you have a look at this table, you'll see that all the fields are text. So we will put the values in quotes on the right of the assignment statement in our code. Remember that with your insert and edit, they actually look the same. Here we have insert, but this could also be edit if we were changing a record. And then very important, both of them have a dot post at the end, else it doesn't actually write it to the database, and you think your error sits here somewhere, but it's actually down here. So with addo tables, it's always important to put the field names in square brackets, in quotes. Then we don't have to even worry about it if there's a space in a field name. The fields go on the left for both insert and edit, and the values on the right, keeping in mind what data type these fields are. They were all text, so on the right we will put all the values in quotes. That's it. So you can run your program, and there's no input required. All we have to do is we have to click on insert, and there we have Charles at the top. Again, if you made a mistake and you want to try that again, you would click on Restore Database. So you click on Restore, fix your code, and run it again. Now, I just wanted to show you, if I ran it once successfully or unsuccessfully, let's say you left out something, you realized, oh, I had to add that, but you already added the client ID, and I try to insert again, it gives me this error that says that you can't change it because something about duplicate values in the index or primary key. Reason for that is my client ID is a primary key, and I already had the value in there. If we click on continue, oh, I just need to see what it says. Oh, it actually added it with a star. Interesting. But I messed it up. So CHA01 already existed, and now I created an error. And I want to go back to the way it was before. I would click on Restore Database. Yes. And now that person won't be there anymore. I can change my code, come back, run it again, and then add it again. This is the second question and last question of question 2, where we have to calculate a percentage. They say they want to calculate a percentage of a specific client for a specific year as a percentage of the total number of cans collected by the company in that year. So the user will select a client from the DB grid by clicking on the record, and they will select a year from the radio group, and the code was provided to store this selection from the radio group for the year. And we had to use the rich edit to display the information as they describe. Now, before you tackle this question, I just want to explain what that part there means. If you see the running of the program here, what they mean by that first bullet is that the user will click on, let's say, this record here. And you have to make use of that client ID to search through this table where we find that client ID to calculate the number of cans that they collected. They will then click on a year and then click on percentage. So I can click on someone else in there and then I can display. But there's no reason to search through anything through this top table called TBL clients, as it would be the active record, the one where the little black triangle sits, that we need to make use of to display the name and the surname there, and then to search for that client ID in this table to add the number of cans together. So let's go back to the question, and they say write code to do the following. You need to display the name and the surname of the client selected, determine and display the total number of cans collected by the client for that specific year selected. So you will remember, if you did the SQL question already, that we have collection date as a date time data type. We also needed to determine how many cans the company collected in total for the year selected. And then outside of the loop, you would calculate the percentage of the client, of what their percentage is of the total, and you would display all that information. Important that the percentage was formatted to 2 decimal places. So press pause and try this. I'll show you the example of output just now. This is an example of the client with the ID BUS06 for the year 2022, Busin Corsi, and here we have Chris Ferreira. That is his client ID selected in that top DB grid, and the year 2021. Check your output, and I'll show you the memo soon. The first part of this question is asking us to display the name and surname of the client. So take note of the fact that the field is actually in TBL clients. From there on, we will loop through TBL can collection. Here we have the provided code to get input from the user, just from that radio group, to get the year stored as a string. And now in the rich edit, we can add the client's name and surname on which they clicked. So when it's the active record, when you see that triangle next to a record where the user clicked on the DB grid, you don't need to search for anything. You can just immediately display that. But do take note of things like spaces and commas and formatting, because there's often a mark allocated for that. You can also see that here there was an empty line, so ensure that you do the same. This here is now my empty line. I did not have to store the client's ID, but I thought I'll store it as a string just to show you. You could have used this here, this code here, referring to that client who's currently the active record in that table. I could have used there. But if you made a mistake and you also loop through TBL clients, you're not going to get the right output because you're changing that client ID. So I've stored it there as a string. And now we have to get totals. So in order to get totals, remember when a variable is on both sides of the assignment statement, like iTotal, where we're going to add the number of cans and also the total number of cans for the company. This is for the client, that's for the company. Per year, we would need to initialize these two variables above the loop. We then, as always, have to start at the first record. So we move that active record to be the first one in the table. So the user clicked here on Bussy, and we displayed Bussy and Corsi in the output. And what I showed you just now is, let's say the active record was this one down here. By doing a dot first on this table, it would move that file pointer to the first record in that table. Now we're going to loop through the table searching for the client ID of Bussy. We have our while loop, and looping through arrow tables will definitely always need a begin and an end. We will have TBL, whatever the name is, dot first, while not end of the table, begin end, and always as the last code just before the end, you will have a tbl.next to move that file pointer to the next record. Else, without this code, you will fall into an infinite loop. Now, if you go back to your tables, you will remember that our date, so we just have to quickly find it. That collection date was a date time data type, so it holds the entire date, but we are actually just looking for a specific year. And therefore, I've used year of, the Delphi function, to extract the year from the collection date. Remember, year of, month of, and day of can only be used on date time data types. That will extract the year, and then I compare it against the year that the user selected in the radio group from the code they provided, but they provided it as a string, and year of is a function that returns an integer value. So I would have to string to int is year. An alternative would be to int to string this side of the if statement. To calculate this percentage, we need to take the number of cans the client, that is in our example Bussy, collected, divided by how many cans that the company collected in that year. So all of this is happening in that if statement for the year. iTotal is adding up all the number of cans, regardless of which client it was. And then I have my if statement to test if my foreign key, which is in TBL collection, the client ID, is that equal to SID, which is the one that is the active record there from the table clients. Remember to have a look at that relationship of yours. We have this one. We are searching for through this table, looking for all the client IDs that match the one that was selected. Inside of this if statement, looking for that client ID, I then add together all the cans collected by this client. There's my .next I spoke about earlier. And then outside of the loop, we would now calculate what the percentage is. And it's the client divided by the total collected by the company times by 100. You could see in the output that what they collected and what the company collected and the percentage only appeared once. So that means this is outside of your loop. Outside of my loop, I have all the labels. Don't be lazy with your labels. you could see that the year was displayed as well, and then the number of the client, the number of the company, and then the percentage. I'll just hit enter so you guys can see. I have my percentage I determined up there, and the question said rounded off to or formatted to 2 decimal places, so it only should see 2 decimal values there, and the little percentage sign there at the end. Take note of those little things so that you don't miss out on easy marks. I quickly want to show you what happens if we fall into an infinite loop, because it is important that you are able to determine whether it is an infinite loop or if you are just not getting any output. Because depending on what that is, you should be looking for how to correct it in different places. Let's say, for example, I did not add my dot next. This will cause an infinite loop when I run my program and I click on my 2022. Now I'm in an infinite loop, but I just don't see any output. If you try to now move this form, I'm trying to click and drag. I can't click and drag my form around. I know that I'm in an infinite loop. In that case, you need to click on the stop button at the back there to get back to your code. Sometimes you have to click on it twice. I've put this back. Now we know we're not in an infinite loop, but I've deleted the not there. I also, just for the example, removed all the output because I want to simulate something that would be similar to an infinite loop providing no output. So that as well, I'm going to take that out so we don't see any output. And you're going to see that this actually looks very much like an infinite loop. So I click there. I can get the same input. There's no output, but I'm able to move my form around. That means that I'm not in an infinite loop, that there's some other error in this code. So I will press, so all we need to do, we didn't have to press stop there because the program isn't in an infinite loop. And I will add my not back and all my output. And now my program will be working again. And we can test it against our Bussy for 2022 and double check that we got the right output. So there we have 0.23 for Bussy. And who was that? CHR08. That's this guy. And he was in 2021. And we get 16.12. Now, you can see the output here was 16.10. That's actually a mistake in the paper. So don't always think there's a mistake. Double check yourself. But we know we did the code correctly. So we would assume that this was a mistake in the paper. You would then, after the exam, tell your teacher that you found this mistake so that they can write a report that goes with the final exams to consider when they are marking. That's the end of the question 2.2. Thank you very much for watching Dandelion Delphi tutorials, and leave me some comments if there's something specific that is still unclear. You can find more explanations about question 2 in my Dandelion Delphi book 2. Hope to see you soon.